Okay, we're going to look at multiplying integers and dividing integers. And let's just get started. First, we're going to use the idea of this number line of looking at the positive numbers here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the positive branch of the number line. These are our positive integers, and they have their reflection over on this side of -1, -2, -3, going on into infinity, way on the other side, the negative integers. Now, sometimes, you are being told, and you probably have learned, and you've got it right, that a positive times a negative is a negative, and a negative times a negative is a positive. But why is this true? Well, let's take a look. Do you know, if you have the number 3, that we say that the number 3 has exactly 2 factors, because 1 times 3 is 3. You can always multiply a number by 1. But what if we start with the number -3? Well, isn't it true that 1 times -3 would have to be equal to -3? Well, gee, that's a positive times a negative equaling a negative. Well, that gives us a first thing, and it would also be true that -1 times 3 would be -3. Well, that means, gee, multiplying by -1 has an interesting effect. If you have +5 and you multiply it by -1, it will flip to the other side of 0 on the other side in the number line and become -7. 7 times -1 would become -7. In fact, let's look what happened to 3. If we multiply 3 times -1, it switches down here to -3. But what if we multiply by -1 again? Well, then we know it has to switch. It'll become +3. So -3 times -1 must be +3. So a negative times a negative is equal to a positive. And that's the big idea. And that kind of explains why. You don't have to memorize it. You can almost believe why it's true now. Okay. And a positive times a negative is equal to a negative. You have to know it, but it's kind of nice to understand it. There's other ways to explain it too. I just watched a Khan Academy video where he used the distributive principle to kind of prove that a negative times a negative is positive, but this one was easier. Now, say I had this question right here, -5 times 2 times 3 times -7 divided by -10 times -3. I could put it in my calculator, or I could write the answer down faster than I could with my calculator. I know that the answer is 7, just glancing at it. And all I had to do was this. I looked at the minuses, 1, 2, 3, 4. If there's an even number, like a negative times a negative is positive, if it's 4 negatives or 6 negatives or 8 negatives, I knew the answer is positive. Now, how did I know just to write down 7? Well, I saw 3 divided by 3 here is 1. And I knew that 5 times 2 is 10 really fast. So 10 divided by 10, this whole thing here cancels with this. And I know the number is positive. I have a different question here, because if I count, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 negatives. Well, if there's 5 negatives, any odd number of negatives, then the answer is negative. So a negative times a negative is equal to a positive, and a negative divided by a negative is equal to a positive too. But the key thing here, even numbers of negatives in a question like this with a lot of multiplying and dividing, the answer is positive. Odd number of negatives, the answer's negative. Hope this helps.